or in another installment of College Planning Untangled, where we try to help families simplify the college planning process and just make this as easy as possible on our families. Bobby, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. I'm excited to talk about this because we talk a lot about college planning while you're in high school and selecting college and all that, but college planning doesn't stop once you're in college, right?
It really doesn't. And in fact, once you're in college, things start to add up financially and all of those good things. So making good decisions while you're in college is just as important.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And today we're talking about changing majors. Bobby and I were talking about this is the time of year that we get to see our kiddos eyeball to eyeball and really see how they're doing. And this is the time, right, that they come to us and they say, Mom, I think I'm going to be changing majors. And a lot of times that that sentence ends with again.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I changed my major 2 or 3 times during college,
Well,
so I certainly did that.
I've got my fun facts, right? So, 80% of kids on average change their major 3 times.
Oh my gosh. Well, yeah, that sounds about right. Yeah, it's interesting because I mostly it did it, and when I did change it, I ended up having to pack a whole lot of classes into the last couple of years to manage to still graduate in 4 years. And so, yeah, you have to really it can stress out the process a lot.
Oh, it can. And okay, so I've got a few more fun facts for you. So this is Math by Kristen. So just, there's going to be a range here. So I don't want anybody to think that my math is awesome, but I did go in and look at what the average cost is to go to college, right?
Okay.
And on average, all in, it's about 32 grand a year. Okay. That includes school, tuition, books, living expenses, all that good stuff, right? And I was like, okay, when you change a major and just knowing the time that it adds onto your studies, on average, I think you can expect to pay about 10 grand every time somebody comes home and says, Mom, I'm going to change my major. Okay.
Wow.
Now, Bobby, it's relative. Okay. Let me give you another, from personal experience when a child changes major. So, Chris went into college thinking he wanted to get into engineering. And in the middle of freshman year, he decided he wanted to get into biochemical engineering. Okay. He came home that next summer, and he's like, man, he goes, I can do the math. I'm good at the math. I'm not loving all the math and I'm not loving all the chemistry that I have to do. And, we talked about it for a while and we're like, you know what? If this isn't going to be fun, get out.
Yeah.
It's not worth it. And so we had a lot of discussions around it and he decided to go into finance because he really is just awesome at numbers, right? And he enjoys that. So that did extend his schooling for a year.
Wow.
Now, there are other little glitches that came up that always do, right? That extra year cost us $50,000.
Oh my gosh. So not just another year, but an expensive extra year.
Yes, because he was out of state, right? And as you know, because you helped him get his scholarship where he had full tuition scholarship paid for at the University of Alabama for 4 years, that extra year at out-of-state tuition costs.
Yeah. And the scholarship didn't apply. Yeah.
And it didn't apply. It was 50 grand.
Oh my gosh.
So guys, this isn't for the faint of heart. I mean, it really is something you need to be thinking about, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. And there are degrees that are just straight 5-year degrees anyway, and so, I mean, there are lots of different ways that this can add up. And I mean, I've known students who, who thought that it was going to work out to change majors and then suddenly discovered that there's just one class they couldn't get or something like that, and so then that they had to stay an extra semester or whatever. There's just a lot of complicated things that can go on here.
There is. And a lot of times people do just think about the tuition piece of it. And I'm like, no, you're also paying for that kid to live and have fun and travel home and, all these things that add up. And, we kind of talked before this. It's like, okay, so we know these things are going to happen, right? 80% of kids change their majors.
Right.
Okay. So when they come home, let's talk about what that's going to look like for parents and how to handle that, and go ahead.
Oh, absolutely. Just because you don't, if you're not prepared for the conversation, you're just going to say whatever your knee jerk reaction is. And a lot of times, that can end up leading to an argument or something because you just are like, why are you changing your major again? Or, something like that. And that's not the best way to react.
Yeah, I think that, or, I see it on the other end too, where you go, oh, okay.
Oh, sure. Fine.
That's great. That's awesome.
Right. And you're not preparing them, for the things that could go wrong that they need to go look into before they make this decision.
Yeah. So it's like, let's have a good conversation about it when it happens. And I'm going to take it to another level too, Bobby. You think about it and it kind of depends. Is this kid a freshman, a sophomore, a junior, a senior? All these things are factors. But when they're coming home and telling you this, I think you also have to think about what have they been going through and thinking about. So if they're a freshman in college, and, there's some emotional things happening, right? It's a tough year because you're getting used to all this stuff. You're seeing all these other people walking around looking like they know what they're doing. And, and if they're uncomfortable or just not really knowing why they're at college because they haven't thought through that.
Yeah.
There's some emotional stuff that's going on that I think is even deeper in this conversation. So it's like, it's worth the conversation to just really sit down. Set a time maybe is a good thing because, like you said, you don't want the knee-jerk reaction. It's like, you know what? Let's sit down at dinner and really talk through this. And have the conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think if you start it out the right way, which is mostly like they came to this decision for a reason. Maybe they just, thought it sounded fun, or maybe they've really thought through it, and you don't know, right? So I think that's where to start.
Yeah, absolutely. So now you brought up a good point. It's like, okay, they come to you with this thought, during this conversation. I think it really is important to understand how they prepared.
Absolutely.
What led to this. So let's talk through that a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, a lot of times these things happen where, I don't know, once a semester, once a year, students maybe have a 10-minute conversation with a counselor or something, maybe. And they can come away from those conversations thinking that, things work, like you might go in there and say, hey, I'm thinking about changing my major. And they're like, oh yeah, sure, that'll work. But it's very specific to yourself and you have to go look up the requirements and all this stuff, right?
Yeah. And let's set up the scenario here. When you sign up for a time with your counselor, you get a 15-minute slot.
Yeah.
So if you're walking in kind of willy-nilly, not prepared, they're going to say, yeah, of course you can change majors. They do that every day, right?
Yeah,
they talk to kids every day that are changing majors. So for them, it's just normal. This is what you do. But yeah, as a kiddo walking in, I think that you really do have to do your homework beforehand and be thinking about, what it is you want to do, why you want to do it, and get real specifics from them on help me out, right? Whatever those questions are that you have. But you can't go in and expect that counselor to give you the answers because that's just not, on what you should do and all that good stuff. They're there to guide, but you got to do a lot of homework before you get in there.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, you can't just trust them saying, and I've known lots of students who have said, oh, I thought it was going to work really easily. And then I realized, oh, you have to have this class, or this class is only offered this semester, whatever, and so you have to make a grid on a piece of paper and put the requirements down and make sure it's all going to work for yourself. A counselor is not going to have the time to be able to do that for you and make sure it would actually work. And also, I think this is part of when you say, ask the student, ask your kid how they prepared for this, is do they actually know, okay, is it because you want to go into this career, right? And then you say, okay, for this career, I think I need this major, right? But people in careers, all in business work, they have all kinds of different majors, right? You can get a job in a career sometimes without having to have that major, but some careers you absolutely have to have it. So do they even know? Are they just trying to change their major because this is a field they're working in? They could just make that a minor, right? They could just take some classes in it before they actually switch or something like that, right?
Yeah. Or here's another thing that I've seen happen. The classes in their current major, some of them are getting a little bit tough, right? And instead of toughing it through on just a couple of those, they're like, yeah, I'll just change my major, so you really got to get inside the head of your kiddo and just really figure out, where they're at, why they're doing it.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. So that's finding out the motivation, finding out whether they did the research, right?
Yeah. And you brought up earlier too, if they do decide to change majors, can they even get into the classes that they need so that they can graduate on time? And obviously this is going to be different if they're a freshman because they've got time versus if they're coming to you as a junior or a senior and wanting to change their majors. It's a timing issue.
Absolutely.
Yep. So think through that. Anything that you think we've missed on that?
I think I think somewhere along the way in here is the reason why people change majors, the reason I changed majors so many times, so I think a lot of the times is that they just don't know what it is they want to do for a career. And so they're just picking for strange reasons. And so, that's part of what my students who have worked with you to actually learn about their skill sets and which careers would work well for their skills. I think that would maybe save this conversation completely. Or if they had conversations, if they had worked with you and learned about their skills and things like that, then they would already know the questions to ask and how to be prepared for this, right?
Yeah. So you're really talking about, having the end goal in mind and really thinking about the career path that they want to go down. Because here's where I see parents and our students making a big mistake, Bobby. And that is feeling okay about going into college with the I'll figure it out as I go plan. For a lot of reasons. Number one, that's what leads to I'm changing majors again, Mom, because they're doing this pendulum swing. They're like, oh, okay, well, I'm going to get into marine biology. You know what? No, nursing sounds good. Oh, you know what? Maybe I'll just do communications. And then the last swing is typically I'll just do business because I can get the business degree, right? And, and I hate seeing that because with that comes a lot of anxiety, a lot of, stress on the kiddo because they don't have a clear idea of why they're in college in the first place. And it's like, it's like just to get a good job. And you're like, oh, let me help you define what's a good job. And a good job is very different for everybody. It's, what is it? For some people, it's I want to make a ton of money. For some people, it's like, you know what? I just want to be happy working with animals. For some, it's very different. So, getting to the root cause of this before you go to college, preferably. If you're already in college, there's still time to really think through what do I want at the end.
And absolutely. Yeah. And even in a major, just being in a major doesn't tell you which career or job, right? You still need to know about your skills to know, okay, which type of role do I want? What kinds of companies, and so that's all stuff that, even as a sophomore, junior in college, I think a student who's having confusion about that, one of the great things they could do is meet with you a few times. So, because that could help sort this stuff out. So I just wanted to mention that because I think that's, part of this is how can we avoid that conversation ever happening, but one of those things is when you have that conversation, you say, okay, how have you prepared? And they say, well, I don't know. It just seems like this major was hard. And this major, my friends who are in it say it's a little easier. Or they say they're great jobs or whatever. And you say, okay, well, hey, why don't we set up a couple of meetings with Kristen and see if we can, drill down into what skill sets and what do you really want, right? Not just what do your friends say sounds fun or interesting,
Yeah. And I'll tell you, I just did a talk last night with a National Charity League group and there's a lot of confusion and I hear it and see it all the time. And again, I'll throw out my fun fact. 2/3 of students, their biggest source of being overwhelmed when they're going into college is figuring out a major. So
Yeah.
guys, this is real. This is a tough thing. And I'll tell you why it's tough. Getting into college is actually the easiest part, right?
Mhm.
You have to get the test taken. You've got to write your essays. There are timelines, there's deadlines, there's a score that you're
Right.
going to get, right? This part about figuring out who you are and what you want to do, it's hard because nobody's forcing you to do it. There's no right or wrong answers.
Yeah.
You have to figure it out. And guess what? It doesn't stop once you get into college. It doesn't stop once you finish college. It doesn't
Right.
stop when you're 45. We're making this decision our whole life.
Gosh,
This
that's so
is what you
true.
said.
Yeah, absolutely. And see, that's the same thing again. Yeah, I changed majors several times. I changed careers several times, and that's because I forgot to like be focused on, like my original idea was I wanted to be a professor and teach. And I forgot that aim that's what makes me happy. And it took me 20 years to circle back to that.
Bobby,
It's really fascinating.
doesn't that just kill you though that you had this
Right.
idea when you were
Yeah.
young, right?
Yeah.
And
I knew what would make me happy, right? But then it's all the things you're talking about. Oh,
yeah,
well, you can make more money as an accountant, you can make more money as an attorney, or oh, I had this didn't work out, so I can't be a law professor, but I could still do something. Like I forgot about you know what the thing was that drove me and made me happy. That's crazy, and that's what I think these conversations can be so important, and that's what I think the main thing is, to the topic of today is if your kid comes home and says, "Hey, I'm thinking about changing the major," these are the things you want to be talking about. It's what makes you happy. What is it you want to do? Is this, how have you figured out that this is what will make you happy? Because that's what's really important. And also just the side note, think all of this with the knee-jerk reactions and the conversations, parents can so easily influence this decision in the wrong way. You know, like part of the reason why I ended up being an accountant at first is because my dad insisted that it's a wise thing to just take one class in accounting so that accounting because it's important. And so I took that one class and then ended up changing my major into it. Uh, even though like I would not have ever come up with that. And I enjoyed the class, but I did not enjoy the career at all. And so my dad, without realizing it, completely influenced me to change my major to something that it shouldn't have been, just because he was saying something that, is true, that it's wise to take it. But that influenced me, and so
well,
you
it
got to be
did.
really careful about these
And Bobby, he actually gave you some really good advice, right? That
things.
taking one class, that makes a lot of sense. There are a lot of parents and they have their kids' best interest at heart for sure.
Absolutely.
But they're like, oh, I can't tell you how many parents are like, I think they'd be a great lawyer, And
Right.
I'm like, you know what? Not everybody's going to be a great lawyer. And a lot of kids aren't built to be a great lawyer,
Oh
right?
my gosh. Yeah.
But they say that, and you got to think that, this kid now is 18, 19, 20 years old. We've given them pretty good advice up until this point. So
Right.
they look at it and they go,
Yeah.
you know what? Mom and dad haven't led me down the wrong path many times. Let
Mhm.
me check that box. I guess I'll just do that. And
Yeah.
it's meaningful when you do have opinions and the advice that I typically give my clients' parents is don't have an opinion. Don't have
Absolutely. Ask them what makes them happy. Don't give them opinions. Absolutely. Right. Because
because it's
it can have
hard.
such an effect.
Yeah, and I'll throw out my 7 little words that I always use, and
Yeah.
that's really interesting. Tell me more. And
Absolutely.
have those kids expound on what they're thinking because then guys, you can have an opinion or at least ask the right questions and help them kind of think through it versus just giving them the answer because a lot of times it's so much easier, Bobby, just to go, whoop, check that box. I guess I'm going to be a lawyer. And they go off on their merry way. And then they come back to you next year and they go, Mom, I'm going to change my major again.
Right. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. I think that's the most important thing. And nobody thinks about these things. And then suddenly the conversation comes up and then you're on the spot. And then if you haven't thought about what to say, yeah, this can help so much.
Yeah, absolutely. Guys, please reach out with any questions. We'd love to
Yeah.
answer any college planning questions you have. Bobby is always very, very open with his time, as am I. Our information is scrolling across the bottom. Please reach out. We're here to help. We've got great resources around college planning and beyond. I just met a lady that helps kids with stress
Oh, that's great.
transitioning into college, which I'm so excited about. And you will be seeing stuff from her, from me, in the near future. But please reach out to us. We'd love to have you. And anything else, Bob?
Absolutely. No, that's great. Yeah, I think just a good thing to keep in mind as you come toward the holidays. I think that question, that's interesting. Tell me more is uh,
It's
that's
golden.
that's a good phrase to use in all sorts of situations during holidays. So that'll be great.
Awesome. We'll see you next time.
All right. Absolutely. Bye bye.